Yesterday, the Rotary Club hosted a couple of former politicians who are trying to build bridges, and they interviewed a couple of authors who say it's time to dump the idea of political left and right.
So I think if we could learn to disagree without being disagreeable, that would be my one-line takeaway.
Attorney Kurt Ferries introduced a crash course on doing just that at the most recent Chattanooga Rotary meeting. On stage, two popular former Tennessee governors, Phil Bredesen and Bill Haslam. They're in their 5th year of co-hosting the podcast, You Might Be Right, and they love the scenic city.
Chattanooga is one of those cities that really has done it successfully over a couple of generations. I really admire what's been accomplished here, and it's great to be here.
For this live recording, Hiram and Verlin Lewis, brothers and co-authors of the book, The Myth of Left and Right, How the Political Spectrum Misleads and Harms America. The governors are perfect moderators for this discussion. Remember, one is a Democrat, the other a Republican, but they agree on much.
We're not partisan, if you will, okay? But what we are against is this idea that if you think different than me, you're not just wrong, you're wrong for bad motives.
The Lewis brothers agree arguing left or right is a false choice. Today's familiar political spectrum is a recent construct.
We've lived under its tyranny for 100 years, and it's time to move on.
Haslam cited Tennessee's political shift over the last 3 to 4 decades.
Rural people in Tennessee moved from historically being Democrat to almost totally being Republican. You cannot find a rural Democrat in our legislature.
The Lewis brothers say the people, their values, and their psychology didn't change. It was the parties.
So rural Tennesseans, for instance, are more religious than the average American. The Republican Party used to be the more secular party. People have a hard time believing this. But if you go back and look in the 1920s, 1930s, religious Americans were far more likely to vote Democrat than Republican. It's just the way it was. It was northern secular business interests that were kind of the backbone of the Republican Party.
Democrats, too. FDR ran on the liberal idea in 1932 of shrinking the size of government.
If you look at the definition of liberal in the 19th century as somebody who believed in free markets, low tariffs. So the meanings of these terms evolve quite substantially, and the reason for that is that there is nothing behind them.
But those meanings have led to tribalism, tension, and a generally unhealthy electorate. So what's the answer?
We just need more and more of people getting to know your neighbor, have a face-to-face conversation, recognize that you actually have a lot in common, even if you belong to different political parties. I mean, I think these kinds of things, organizations like Rotary, where there are thick community bonds, where people have friendships, relationships, a sense of identity, a sense of belonging, that they don't have to have their life's meaning rise and fall on the outcome of the upcoming presidential election.
Very interesting discussion. If you'd like to listen to the entire You Might Be Right podcast and explore Bredesen and Haslam's entire 5 seasons, you can find a link in this story on our website.